Unaware his wife secretly owned the bank funding his billion-dollar startup, Ethan Rivers walked onto the launch event stage, ready to serve her divorce papers. But he had no idea the woman he planned to humiliate tonight was holding the one power that could crush everything he built. Lena Rivers stood quietly at the edge of the spotlight, the ordinary wife the world barely noticed, the woman Ethan believed he had outgrown. She looked simple, calm, almost fragile. But behind her soft eyes lived a truth so massive, so dangerous, so deeply intertwined with his billion-dollar dream that one wrong move, this wrong move, would change his destiny forever. Ethan smiled confidently at the crowd, unaware that the bank funding his billion-dollar startup, the bank he bragged about securing without favors, or the bank he believed would immortalize him as a tech legend, was owned by the very woman he saw as disposable. He thought tonight was his victory, his rebirth, his chance to show the world he didn't need his wife anymore. But what kind of man serves divorce papers at his own launch event? And what kind of woman stays silent when she holds the power to crush the husband who betrayed her? And if she secretly owned the bank funding his billion-dollar startup, what would she do next? And why didn't he see it coming? The answers to these questions will shake everything you believe about love, betrayal, power, and consequences. Ethan Rivers strode into the launch hall like a man convinced destiny had finally stretched out its hand to welcome him home. Cameras turned instinctively toward him, flashes bursting like fireworks celebrating a king's arrival. His suit was custom-made, his smile sharp, his confidence radiating through the air like electricity. This was the night he had dreamed about, fought for, bled for. Rivers Pay, his billion-dollar startup, was finally being unveiled to the world. Lena Rivers walked 2 quiet steps behind him, not beside him, behind. Her navy dress, simple and elegant, contrasted sharply with the glittering gowns and tailored tuxedos around her. She looked like someone attending the gala, not someone tied to the man headlining it. People's eyes slid past her, barely acknowledging her presence, and Ethan didn't correct them. He never did. "Keep up," he whispered without looking back. "I'm right here," she replied softly. But he didn't hear her, or pretended not to. A minor detail, but the kind that revealed a widening crack. Step 2, logic patch. Roughness doesn't arrive suddenly. It grows quietly, slowly, like a vine around a tree trunk. Ethan's COO, Mark, walked briskly toward him and handed him his tablet. His face looked tight. "Everything on schedule?" Ethan asked. "Yes, except—" Mark hesitated, glancing briefly at Lena before continuing. "The final approval from the bank's compliance unit came in late this afternoon." Ethan waved this off. "They always delay something. Banks love paperwork." Lena lowered her eyes, but her mind flashed back, a boardroom with her father, Arthur Hale, explaining why strict compliance mattered, why documentation saved lives and empires, why power must be quiet, never loud. Those lessons lived inside her like breath. "Everything okay?" she asked gently. "Business?" Ethan answered curtly. Another foreshadowing seed planted. He no longer shared anything with her. They moved further into the hall. Giant LED screens displayed the Rivers Pay logo in vibrant blues and golds. Investors, tech giants, political figures, and journalists filled the room with murmurs of admiration. Then Lena felt a pair of eyes drilling into her. Aurora Blake, tall, polished, seductive in a red dress that sparkled under the lights, yet her smile carried a cold sharpness. She raised her champagne glass in Ethan's direction. Ethan tried to hide his reaction, but he stood straighter, his breath hitching. Lena saw it. Not jealousy, recognition, confirmation of what she already feared. "Who is she?" Lena asked quietly. "A potential investor," Ethan said quickly. "Don't overthink." But the way he avoided her eyes told a different truth. Step 3. Deep foreshadowing, scattered hints of a betrayal brewing, late nights, secrecy, changed passwords, and Aurora appearing too comfortable in Ethan's orbit. Reporters gathered around Ethan. "Ethan, over here." "Sir, what separates Rivers Pay from other fintechs?" "Is it true your startup is already valued in the billions?" Ethan basked in the attention like a plant drinking sunlight. "My team and I have built something revolutionary," Ethan said proudly. "Tonight will mark the beginning of the future." Lena's eyes softened, not from admiration, but from memory. A flashback returned, a small apartment, the two of them younger, Ethan working late on his laptop while she warmed noodles on a stove. He once told her, "I just want to make you proud." Lena! But tonight, he didn't even want to stand beside her. A security guard approached discreetly. "Sir, this arrived for you." A sealed envelope. Ethan's fingers trembled, not with fear, with relief, as though a burden had been lifted. Lena's heart thudded painfully. Why relief? Why now? Why at the launch event? Aurora straightened her posture, her lips curving knowingly. Ethan turned slowly toward Lena. "Ethan," she whispered. He stepped forward, and the room, sensing something dramatic, fell into a breathless silence. The envelope glittered under the lights. Ethan's hand tightened, and Lena's world prepared to shatter. Ethan held the envelope like it contained his freedom. He didn't even glance at Lena. He simply inhaled sharply, squared his shoulders, and looked at the audience with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Cameras hovered eagerly, sensing drama, unaware of how devastating the next few seconds would be for the woman standing silently in front of him. Lena watched him carefully, searching his face for answers he no longer gave. A strange stillness spread through her chest, the kind that arrives when the mind already knows the truth before the heart can accept it. Ethan stepped closer, the envelope hanging between them like a loaded gun. "Ethan," she whispered, "what's going on?" He didn't reply. He didn't blink. He simply extended the envelope toward her with a calculated elegance that made the moment both intimate and cruel at the same time. "Take it," he said quietly. Lena reached out slowly. Her fingers brushed the paper, and a memory flickered. Ethan kneeling on their living room floor years ago, presenting her with a ring inside a similar white envelope because he said he couldn't afford a jewelry box yet. Back then, that envelope was a promise of forever. Tonight, it felt like a blade. As she pulled the envelope open, Ethan turned away from her and faced the audience, voice amplified by the microphone pinned to his lapel. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, forcing a laugh, "before we officially launch Rivers Pay, there's one last personal matter I need to settle." People murmured. A few chuckled, assuming this was a joke. Aurora Blake leaned back against the wall, arms crossed, smiling like she had been waiting her whole life for this exact spectacle. Lena unfolded the paper. She didn't breathe. She didn't move. Her eyes scanned the bold title, "Petition for Divorce." Her chest tightened violently, but her face remained calm. Too calm. The crowd slowly realized what was happening. The smiles faded. The murmurs turned into a stunned, suffocating silence that spread across the hall like smoke. Ethan continued, "I believe that to move into my future, I must leave behind what no longer aligns with who I am becoming." Lena closed her eyes briefly, not in disbelief, not in pain, but in mourning. She opened them again, and her gaze found Ethan. "You're doing this now, in front of everyone?" He didn't even look at her. "It's better this way. Clean break." "Clean?" she repeated softly, the word tasting bitter on her tongue. A flashback surfaced. Ethan, months earlier, pacing the living room with excitement when he received the first confirmation email from the bank approving his funding request. "Lena, they approved it. Hale National Bank approved our loan." She hugged him tightly, hiding the fact that she was the majority owner. She wanted him to stand on his own, to believe in himself, to grow without ever feeling indebted. She supported him silently. Now he was severing her loudly. Aurora stepped forward slightly, whispering to a colleague, "This is the part where the dead weight falls off." The words sliced through Lena's heart like knives, but she held her ground. Ethan finally turned to her. "Sign it tonight. My lawyer has everything ready." "Your lawyer?" she asked, voice thin. "You planned this?" "I needed to do what's best for my career, Lena." His voice hardened, as though reason justified cruelty. "You don't fit the image anymore." Mark, the COO, flinched at the remark. Investors exchanged uneasy looks. A few reporters raised their cameras again, sensing scandal. Lena's breath trembled, but she steadied herself. Ethan's face wasn't proud or triumphant. It was desperate, and desperation means fear. She studied him the way her father once taught her to study hostile competitors. When a man tries to embarrass you publicly, he's hiding something privately. Ethan's phone buzzed. Aurora's name flashed across the screen. Lena saw it. The truth crystallized. Ethan wasn't just divorcing her. He was replacing her. Suddenly the world dimmed around Lena, sounds fading until only Ethan's voice cut through the air. "Please don't make this harder than it needs to be. I just sign." Her hands trembled slightly, a minor detail. But in retention, minor details are seeds. Step 2. Logic patch. Tremble not from weakness, but from restraint. She folded the paper and looked Ethan in the eyes. "Are you absolutely sure?" she asked quietly. He nodded once, firm. "Yes?" Behind Lena, a chilling silence surged, as if the room itself braced for something unseen, because everyone felt it, the calm before a storm, the moment before consequences awaken. Aurora smirked again. Mark looked sick. Investors whispered nervously. Security watched Ethan with confusion. And Lena? Lena straightened her shoulders with a grace that felt ancient, inherited from Arthur Hale's legacy. She spoke 4 soft words, not to Ethan, but to herself. Then so be it. Before Ethan could decipher her tone, a small notification sound echoed from someone's phone nearby. Then another. Then dozens. Investors began checking their phones. Mark's tablet vibrated violently with alerts. Ethan frowned. "What's going on?" Lena didn't answer. Her silence was louder than thunder. A ripple of confusion coursed through the hall as phones buzzed one after another. Investors frowned at their screens. Mark's face drained of all color as alert after alert flashed across his tablet like an emergency siren. Even Aurora's confident smirk faltered as she reached into her purse to check her device. Ethan looked around, irritated. "Is there a network issue? Why is everyone—" Mark rushed toward him, voice trembling. "Ethan, you need to see this." "What now?" Ethan snapped. He's still basking in the misguided belief that the only disruption tonight would be his wife's silent heartbreak. Mark turned the tablet around. Ethan's breath caught. On the screen was a message from Hale National Bank, bold, urgent, unmistakable. Notice of immediate credit line freeze, effective immediately. Ethan blinked rapidly. This must be a mistake. Another alert chimed. Notice of loan. Recall. Rivers Global Technologies. Full repayment required within 24 hours. "What?" Ethan hissed. No, this can't. Mark, tell them to reverse this." Mark swallowed hard. "It's automated. It's already registered in their system." "Then call someone," Ethan snapped. "Call the bank. Call the compliance director. Call the—" He froze mid-sentence. Because Lena's eyes were on him, not cold, not triumphant, just knowing, painful, deep. The way someone looks when they've already watched a storm forming long before the first lightning strike. Ethan stepped closer to her slowly. "Did you know about this?" he whispered. "No," Lena repeated softly, as if tasting the word. "Ethan, you approved these clauses yourself, months ago." "What clauses?" he demanded. She searched his confused expression for honesty and found none. On only ignorance, only arrogance, only a man who had sent every document to his assistant without ever reading them. Step 2. Logic fix. Ethan ignoring bank communications earlier now pays off. His irresponsibility is established. Clause 14, B, she said gently. Violation triggers an immediate recall. "I didn't violate anything," Ethan shouted, but uncertainty flickered in his voice. Lena's silence answered him. Flashback, Ethan tossing a stack of bank documents onto the table. "Just skim it, Lena. You're good with these things." She handed them back. "It's your company, Ethan. You need to read what you sign." He kissed her forehead then. "You're overthinking. These people need me more than I need them." That arrogance had finally come due. Around them, panicked whispers spread like wildfire. Did Rivers pay, lose funding? This can't be happening on launch night. Was there fraud? Is the company collapsing? Aurora's face twisted in disgust. "Ethan, what is this? You told me everything was secure." "Shut up," he snapped without looking at her. Lena exhaled slowly, steadying herself as Ethan spiraled. She had promised herself she would not intervene tonight, not until he revealed who he truly was. And now he had. Publicly. Brutally. He grabbed her wrist suddenly, desperation in his eyes. "Lena, help me fix this. You have contacts. Your father used to deal with banks. Maybe you can—" She pulled her hand away gently. "Ethan, you told me I don't fit your future." "That was before this disaster." His voice cracked. "Please, just talk to someone at the bank. Please." Her expression softened, not out of love, but out of the grief of watching a man bury himself with his own choices. "I can talk to the bank," she said quietly. Ethan sagged with relief. Thank you. I knew you'd understand." "But," she continued, and the hall seemed to freeze, "you won't like the conversation." The word "but" sliced through him. Aurora stepped forward. Why the hesitation? Does she even know anyone important? Honestly, Ethan, this is embarrassing. Lena turned her gaze toward Aurora, and for a brief second a terrifying calm settled over her eyes. "I know everyone who matters," she said simply. Lights from cameras flickered against her face. She looked serene, almost royal. Ethan blinked. What does that mean? Before she could answer, 3 figures entered the hall through the back doors, older, distinguished, dressed in the deep navy colors of high-ranking banking officials. People parted instinctively as they approached Lena with quiet, reverent nods. Ethan's heart pounded. Why are they coming here?" he whispered. One of the officials bowed slightly to Lena. "Mrs. Rivers," he said respectfully, "we executed your directive. Funding has been frozen exactly as you instructed." Ethan's mind shattered. He looked at Lena, really looked at her. "Lena, what did you do?" Lena lifted her eyes slowly, and in them Ethan saw the truth forming like dawn breaking. She wasn't just his wife. She wasn't just someone who knew a few contacts. She was something else entirely, something powerful, something he had never bothered to discover. Before he could ask again, Lena spoke one sentence that made the entire hall gasp. "Ethan, I own the bank." The room went silent, not quiet, not muted. Silent, a suffocating, breathless silence that swallowed every whisper, every camera click, every heartbeat. The kind of silence that changes lives in an instant. Ethan stared at Lena as though she had just spoken in a language he had never heard before. You what?" he stammered. But Lena didn't repeat herself. She didn't need to. The banking officials standing respectfully behind her made the truth undeniable. Aurora blinked rapidly, her confidence crumbling like glass. "Ethan, what is she talking about? Why would the bank?" One of the officials turned to Aurora sharply. "Ma'am, you are not authorized to speak in this discussion." The dismissal hit harder than a slap. Aurora's cheeks flushed with humiliation, and she stepped back, stunned. Ethan looked between Lena and the officials, desperation rising in his voice. This is a joke, right? This is some stunt?" His chest rose and fell too quickly. Panic was starting to take over. Lena met his eyes, and suddenly he was confronted not with the quiet wife he'd pushed aside, but with someone unfamiliar, someone composed, unshaken, powerful enough to command entire institutions with a whisper. "Ethan," she said softly, "I told you earlier that you wouldn't like the conversation." His voice cracked. "Lena, please, explain." A flashback flickered through her mind. Arthur Hale sitting at the edge of her childhood bed, handing her a small wooden box with the Hale crest. "When I'm gone," he told her, "remember 2 things. Never raise your voice, and never reveal your power until the moment someone believes you have none." She had lived her life by those words. Ethan had mistaken silence for insignificance. The official stepped forward. "Mrs. Rivers is the majority shareholder and primary controller of Hale National Bank. All major decisions, including loan recalls and credit freezes, fall under her authority." Ethan staggered backward. "But why? How?" His words tangled. "You never told me this." "You never asked," she replied. The simplicity of the answer cut deeper than any insult. Ethan shook his head violently. "Lena, please. You can't do this. Not tonight. Not at my launch." His voice softened, breaking apart. "Not to me." Her eyes shimmered, not cold, not vengeful. Heartbroken. "You served me divorce papers, Ethan, in front of the world. You chose this place, this moment, this stage." She paused, breath trembling. "I am simply allowing you to experience the consequences of your choices. In the same setting you chose for mine." Gasps rippled across the room. Aurora's heels clicked sharply as she tried to slip away unnoticed, but a group of reporters blocked her path, flashing cameras in her face. She threw Ethan a desperate glare, but he wasn't looking at her anymore. His entire world had narrowed to the woman standing in front of him. "Lena," he whispered, voice cracking, "I didn't know you were... this?" Her expression softened with grief, not superiority. "I didn't want you to love me for this." That sentence hit him harder than any punishment, because he knew it was true. He remembered the nights she made tea while he coded late into dawn, her words encouraging him even when he doubted himself. And he remembered how she celebrated the first tiny investor he secured, even though she could have funded the entire project herself without blinking. She had never cared about power, only about partnership. But he had cared, deeply, more than he realized. Mark approached timidly. "Ethan, we have a problem. The investors are panicking. Some are already withdrawing. We need a statement, a plan, something." Ethan's voice trembled. "Lena can fix this." Mark hesitated, eyes flickering with sympathy and fear. "Ethan, you just served her divorce papers." The words hung heavy in the air. Ethan turned back to her. "Lena, please, help me. I'm begging you." She closed her eyes, fighting back tears she refused to let fall here, not in front of the crowd, not in front of the world that now viewed her differently, not in front of the man who had torn her dignity apart in this very room. "I supported you quietly, Ethan," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "You never noticed. You never asked why I understood your documents better than you. You never wondered how I knew every stage of your funding process. You assumed I was small." His lip trembled. I was wrong." "Yes," she said gently, "but being wrong has consequences." He stepped forward instinctively, wanting to touch her arm, her hand, anything, but she stepped back. "Please," he breathed. She shook her head. "Tonight was your rebirth, remember? You said you needed to leave behind what no longer aligned with your future." His face twisted in agony. "Lena, don't do this." She looked at him with a softness that hurt more than anger ever could. "I'm not doing anything, Ethan," she said quietly. "I'm simply removing my protection." Ethan's eyes widened. "Protection?" he whispered. "From what?" Before she could answer, another alert pinged across the screens. Giant, red, unmistakable. Riverspace stock value. Critical plunge. Investor mass exit in progress. The crowd erupted into chaos. Ethan staggered as if struck. Lena watched him, her heart breaking even as she stood firm. And then he whispered the question that would define the rest of the night. "Lena, what happens now?" Her eyes lifted slowly, filled with something he couldn't yet understand. "Now," she said, "you see the world you built without me. Chaos tore through the launch hall like a violent storm. Investors rushed toward exits. Reporters shoved microphones at anyone who looked important. Security yelled orders no one listened to. And the buzzing alert screens flickered warnings like fire alarms. But in the center of the chaos stood two people, Ethan and Lena, facing each other in a moment suspended between past and future. Ethan's breath shook as he stared up at the enormous display screen showing the catastrophic stock collapse. This can't be happening," he muttered. His fingers twitched uncontrollably, as if trying to grab something solid while the ground beneath him crumbled. Lena watched him, her face unreadable, not proud, not vindictive, just grieving. The kind of grief that comes from realizing someone you trusted has created their own downfall and wants you to save them from it. A memory flickered. Arthur Hale sitting across from her in his study, stacks of documents on the table between them. "When you love someone," he told her, you don't shield them from accountability. You stand by them, yes, but you let them carry the weight of their own decisions. Otherwise, you raise a child, not a partner." She had been too young then to understand the depth of those words. Tonight, she understood perfectly. Mark rushed to Ethan's side, voice quivering. "Ethan, the board members are demanding an emergency meeting. Some are threatening legal action if you don't issue a stability statement immediately." "I can fix this," Ethan whispered, but he looked like a man drowning in rising water. "We can fix this," Mark corrected, then hesitated. "If Mrs. Rivers intervenes." Ethan turned to her with the desperation of a man reaching for a lifeline. "Lena, please, I'm begging you. You can undo this. One call. Just one call." Lena lowered her gaze briefly, a conflict tightening in her chest. She could fix this. She could restore the line of credit instantly. She could calm investors with a simple statement. She could save everything he had worked for. But then her eyes lifted and landed on the crushed divorce papers still clutched in her trembling hand. "You were ready to humiliate me," she whispered, voice shaking despite her control. "You rehearsed it. You planned it. You prepared lawyers. You invited cameras." Ethan swallowed hard. I made a mistake." "This wasn't a mistake," she interrupted. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is saying something hurtful in anger. But this, Ethan, this was intentional." He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Aurora, who had been cornered by reporters earlier, finally managed to break free and hurried toward Ethan. "Ethan, we need to talk privately. This is getting out of hand." Lena turned her head slowly toward Aurora, and the force of the gaze made Aurora stop mid-sentence, her confidence disintegrating. "Your part in this is over," Lena said quietly. Aurora's face flushed. "Excuse me?" Lena took one step closer. When a business is collapsing, the first to flee are the ones who were never committed. You were already halfway out the door the moment those alerts appeared. Aurora stiffened, but Ethan didn't defend her. His mind was too consumed by terror. Another alert blasted across the hall. Bank recall initiated. Full control of collateral transfers to Hale National Bank. Ethan felt the blood drain from his body. Collateral meant everything: intellectual property, patents, technology, servers, Rivers Pay itself. Everything he built was being absorbed. Everything he bragged about was slipping through his fingers. He looked at Lena again, his voice cracking like a broken string. "Lena, I'm losing everything." Her eyes softened with pain. "Ethan, you lost me first." He staggered, physically struck by the words. She continued, voice trembling with emotion she could no longer hide. "You were my partner. I would have supported you in ways you can't even imagine. I believed in your vision, your passion, your dreams. I never wanted credit. I never wanted recognition. I only wanted us to build something together." Tears finally spilled down her cheeks. "But you didn't want a partner. You wanted a trophy for when the cameras turned on and a burden to discard when the lights went off." Ethan dropped to his knees, right in front of her. His voice was a whisper. "Lena, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please, please don't let this be the end." People around them gasped. Aurora backed away, humiliated. Mark looked away, unable to watch the fall of the man he once admired. Lena stared down at Ethan. Her husband, her betrayal, her heartbreak, the man who created the very ruin he was begging her to save him from. "I don't want to destroy you, Ethan," she whispered. He looked up with fragile hope. "But," she added, and the hope shattered instantly, "I won't protect you from the consequences of your choices anymore." His lips trembled. "Lena, what does that mean?" She took a step back. The banking official stepped forward in her place. Ethan looked between them and her, panic rising again. "Wait, Lena, what are you going to do?" Her eyes lifted slowly, and she spoke the sentence that froze the entire launch hall like ice. "Ethan, the company no longer belongs to you." Ethan's face collapsed as Lena's words echoed across the hall like a final verdict. "The company no longer belongs to you?" He blinked rapidly, as if trying to force the world back into focus. Back into the illusion where he was still the genius founder, the rising billionaire, the man in control. But that world had evaporated the moment he placed the divorce papers into Lena's hands. No, Lena, please," he whispered, choking on the words. You can't take everything." A painful irony tightened in Lena's chest. He had been ready to take everything from her, her dignity, her voice, her partnership, her place in his future, yet now he trembled at the sight of losing even a fraction of what he had tried to tear from her. "This isn't about taking," Lena said softly. "It's about the truth finally standing where it belongs." Behind her, the banking officials continued processing emergency orders. Mark spoke quietly into his headset, trying to salvage what was left of the launch, but every attempt crashed into the same wall. Hale National Bank now controlled Rivers Pay. And Hale National Bank belonged to Lena. A flashback stirred in Lena's mind. Her wedding day. Ethan had kissed her forehead and whispered, "I don't care about money, I care about us." She had believed him, believed every word, believed that love could exist without power, believed that two people could stand side by side without one overshadowing the other. But tonight proved something else. Ethan had only ever loved the version of her he could control. "Lena," Ethan pleaded, still on his knees. "I know I hurt you. I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have done any of this, but we can fix it. Just please, help me. Don't let them take everything." She crouched down slowly, so their eyes met at the same level. For a moment, the chaos around them blurred into silence. All she could see was the man she had once loved. How terrified and broken, yet still only thinking about his losses, not hers. "You're not losing everything, Ethan," she whispered. "You're losing the illusion that everything revolved around you." He swallowed, tears streaking down his face. "I can change. I swear. Lena, I'll do anything." If he had said those words 2 days ago, she might have believed him. She might have saved him. She might have fought for them. But tonight was different. "You didn't just end our marriage," Lena said, her voice trembling. "You ended the person I used to be, the woman who kept shrinking to make you feel taller, the woman who stayed small so your ego could stay large. You ended her the moment you tried to humiliate her in front of the world." Ethan bowed his head, sobbing. Investors who once admired him now watched in stunned discomfort. Aurora stood alone in the corner, ignored, irrelevant, exposed. Mark's eyes glistened with sympathy. For Lena. The banking officials stepped forward. "Mrs. Rivers, the paperwork is complete. As per clause 14B and the company's collateral agreements, Hale National Bank now assumes full operational control of Rivers Global Technologies, including Rivers Pay." Ethan lifted his head slowly, searching Lena's eyes for mercy. "What happens to me?" he whispered. Her heart clenched because she remembered the man he had been before ambition poisoned him. But pain and loyalty could not coexist anymore. "You will stay on as a consultant," she said, voice steady. 6 months, $1 per month. The words hit him like a punch. A dollar? "It's symbolic," she said, "a reminder of humility, a reminder of consequences. A chance for you to rebuild from the ground you tried to stand on alone." "But after 6 months?" Ethan asked, voice trembling. Lena stood slowly. "After 6 months," she said, "your services will no longer be required." The room froze again. No anger in her tone, no triumph, no bitterness. Just truth. Ethan covered his face with both hands as the weight of his downfall sank into his bones. Lena watched him, not with vengeance, but with the quiet sorrow of someone finally releasing something heavy she had carried for too long. The hall began to empty as investors redirected their attention to Lena, to the true power, the true leader, the true visionary they had underestimated. One by one, they approached her. Not Ethan. Her. "Mrs. Rivers, we'd love to schedule a meeting. We didn't know Hale National had such deep ties to this project. We're excited to hear your vision for what comes next." Lena nodded politely, but her eyes never left Ethan. When the last reporter finished and the hall finally quieted, Ethan rose shakily to his feet. He looked smaller than she had ever seen him, like a man standing in the ruins of the empire he built on pride. "Lena," he whispered one last time, "is this really the end?" She approached him, stopping inches away. Her voice softened. "No," she said, "this is the beginning." His brows furrowed in confusion. "The beginning," she continued, "of you learning who you could have become if you hadn't tried to destroy the one person who wanted to build with you." A final tear slipped down Ethan's cheek. Lena turned away, her footsteps steady, her presence commanding as she walked toward the future that finally belonged to her, not because she took it, but because she had earned it long before Ethan ever knew her worth. Behind her, Ethan collapsed into a chair, staring at the empty stage where he once stood as the star of his own story. Now he finally understood. The real power had never been his. It had always been Lena's, and he had been too blind to see it.